So welcome back to the You Are Light month, or I Am Light. Each week we say that God is infinite and ever present, and that wherever we are, God is. And then I'm not sure how many years ago the tag was added, as we allow our light to shine, which is fitting, shining in whichever way that you're able to shine. I found a quote from William Blake, and actually the quote came via Wayne Dyer. So I wasn't reading William Blake, I was reading Wayne Dyer and came across the quote. And he says, if the doors of perception were cleansed, everything would appear to man as it is, infinite. For man has closed himself up till he sees all things through narrow chinks of his cavern. So how are you seeing the light, and how are you portraying the light? You know, if you in this form are only seeing different perceptions during this lifetime, then you're not really seeing everything that's on the outside of the cavern, if we take that metaphor. It's like being inside an apartment building and you have a little peepholes, you know, and you look outside to see who's there, but you only can see that little fisheye view. You don't see the whole hallway. You don't see what's under the door, you know, any of that. You just see straight on. And sometimes I think that's what we're dealing with, is that feeling of not knowing. But sometimes we're so used to just seeing through the little cracks that we don't know any different. And that becomes a kind of reality. My children were watching a movie this morning because they had found the book series and were fascinated by the book series of The Ender. So the movie was Ender's Game that they had put in this morning. And it's about an Earth society, so picture future, in which they are fighting a war. And they're fighting a war with beings that are so different than humans, they do not understand how to communicate with them. So they look kind of like a wasp, bee type critter, but they're huge, and they act like they have a queen, and they're in that kind of community, but they're intelligent and they're spacefaring, but they don't communicate well with humans. And they ended up having a colony on Earth, but nobody knew why. They thought it was an invasion. So the war started. And throughout fighting that war, they started using children to fight the war. But the children did not understand that they were fighting the war. So that's the conflict in the story. They take a group of children and they tell them they're training them for future. And it's all done via what they think is a video game simulation. And they learn how to work as a team. They have a weapons specialist, a space specialist, you know, they have the leader, the one in charge. And each time they go in, they think it's a simulation. So they win. These children win by, I'm going to give it away, but please watch the story anyway. These children win by blowing up the planet. End game. They blew up the planet. And only then did the adults tell them what really happened. Throughout, weaving through that story, the young man that's in charge has dreams. And he starts to speculate throughout the movie that what if the people, the creatures they're fighting against can communicate in a different way. Maybe they can think to each other. It wasn't until after the, quote, simulation ended in Endgame that he went into overdrive with those feelings that he'd been having. And he followed them to a queen that had a couple of eggs, and one of them was a new queen. And at that moment, he was able to communicate. And it was all through feeling. There was no words in that scene. It was simply feeling. They kind of looked at each other. There was feeling. He expressed his words and got feeling back. So there was a way to communicate. It just wasn't with words. But his whole perception was it was a game. And he tried to explain to the adults after that if he knew the whole picture, that it wasn't a simulation, he would have acted very differently. So how many of us would act differently if we had more information? If we even realized the possibility of more information? I put a reading, a passage from Arnita Morjani on your paper, and I'm going to read it to you. We're going to call it the reading of the day. But it talks about her perceptions and how they changed because of her near-death experience. And it's from her book called Dying to Be Me. And this is when she was having the near-death experience. The overwhelming sensations were in a realm of their own, and words don't exist to describe them. The feeling of complete, pure, unconditional love was unlike anything I'd known before. Unqualified and nonjudgmental. It was totally undiscriminating, as if I didn't have to do anything to deserve it, nor did I need to prove myself to earn it. To my amazement, I became aware of the presence of my father, who died 10 years earlier, and it brought me an unbelievable level of comfort to sense him with me. Dad, you're here. I can't believe it. I wasn't speaking those words, I was merely thinking them. In fact, it was more like I was feeling the emotions behind the words, as there was no other way of communicating in that realm other than through our emotions. Yes, I'm here, my darling. I've always been here for you and our whole family. My father communicated to me. Again, there were no words, just emotions, but I clearly understood. And then I recognized the essence of my best friend, Sony, who died of cancer 3 years prior. I felt what I can only describe as excitement, as their presence enveloped me like a warm embrace, and I was comforted. I seemed to know that they'd been around me for some time, long before I came aware of them, all through my illness. I was also aware of other beings around me. I didn't recognize them, but I knew they loved me very much and were protecting me. I realized they were there all the time, surrounding me and enveloping me with love, even when I wasn't conscious of it. It was tremendously comforting for me to reconnect with Sony's essence, for I'd missed her and ached for her during the years since she'd gone. I felt nothing but unconditional love from both her and for her. And then, just as I experienced it, it was as though my essence merged with Sony's and I became her. I understood that she was there, here, and everywhere. She was able to be in all places at all times for all her loved ones. Although I was no longer using my 5 physical senses, I had unlimited perception. As if a new sense had become available, one that was more heightened than any of our usual faculties. I had 360-degree peripheral vision with total awareness of my surroundings, and as amazing as it all sounds, it still felt almost normal. Being in a body now felt confining. Being in the body is being in that cavern with the narrow chinks. If we can remember that our perceptions are limited and that the essence of you is that light, and that essence can merge and be and forever, and still is everywhere at once, just as she was experiencing her friends. And you have a beautiful possibility right now to understand and be more, despite being confined by only 5 senses. And it's an amazing opportunity. I was told frequently growing up that people in my family needed to be realists, and that I was not. And yet, what Anita is describing is reality. And if we can take what our perceptions of reality are here and expand them, just in the feeling or the understanding, then it becomes more. Then you can be like the child who said, you know what, even though I played that game and I endgamed it, I still have this chance to be more and do more, even for those people that the planet was destroyed. You can go beyond those limitations, and you can go beyond. I love when she says, and it did matter, you are loved unconditionally for who you are, even despite our perception deprivation. Take some time this week to explore that. The last few nights have been absolutely incredible for stargazing. I don't know how many of you were maybe up about 11 o'clock last night, but the moon hovering low in the horizon, and it was orange, and it looked like you could touch it. I mean, it was that low and it's a half moon, but it's amazing. And then since it's so low in the horizon, the stars are popping out even more. And when you stand in that, I know we always talk about the sunset, and the sunset being that moment where you can connect with everything. But I find it's more 11 o'clock to midnight if you can get out in the stars. There's a loudness and a quietness there all at the same time. And then if you take time to look at the trees at that moment, it is very possible to understand the energy of the trees and of the surroundings, and to feel yourself being spread out, a part of that. And in that way, understanding your essence is part of everything, and not really much different than the universe you're looking at up through the sky. Carol mentioned the musicians that were here yesterday. And musicians have a way to change the energy of the room and to become one with that. And you know when they are with the music, because everybody feels it. You all have that capability to be the musicians in your everyday life, to feel where you're at and let everybody else feel it. And in that way, merging the essence. It's not going to quite be the same as Anita's experience of essence merging with essence in that fashion. But you'll get a little broader perspective of what it means to be light in the human form. I'm going to give you one last example. In witnessing the passing of a loved one, there was a light. Now, I witnessed it as a purple light, but in talking to other people, and especially those that work in hospice situations, that light varies, but the experience seems to be the same. That there is some kind of extra light or presence or feeling in that room. It's tangible at that moment when somebody is getting ready to leave this world for the next. And that light, to recognize that presence that people are talking about in the hospice, or even one that I witnessed, is present in everybody. And that light is what's surrounding us at all times. So in the experience I had, not only was there a light presence in the room for hours before the passing, but the light of the individual going to merge with that light was tangible. And if we can, and to know that that's what's in each and every one of us, our perceptions of and limitations become very not reality. There's so much more. Allow yourself to be everywhere at once. It's been warm enough the last week. Take a chance and go out 11:30 tonight. And don't do anything but feel. Because as Anita said, and what was pictured in the movie and book Ender's Game, it's the feeling, really, that drives the communication. The feeling is what will get us to that compassion place with each other. And it's not easy. It's not easy. And sometimes it's more appropriate at that moment to nod and send the compassion and then to have the dialogue. And that's part of the experience of being human as well. But it's in there. It's in there, and it's in each of you. Wherever we are, God is. But wherever God is, we are. I have I have a song for meditation today, and it's actually a different version than what I'm used to. It's We Are Light of the World, and it's actually a Catholic hymn, but it's based on the Beatitudes and We Are Light of the World, but it's a little bit of a jazz version. So I'll just feel it, maybe have fun with it, but the words are important. And so sit back and enjoy the meditation. We are the light of the world.